Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Reyes Taylor.
Hi, everyone, and welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew Moreno. Joining me tonight, Daniel Starkand, who, like myself, grew up Southern California, lives in the area, has followed the Dodgers basically since the days we were born. Unfortunately, we have a little bit of a harder, kind of more challenging, difficult video for us tonight. We're sort of breaking up our World Series coverage, obviously, with the news that Fernando Valenzuela has passed away. I know Jeff and Anthony covered it a little bit on last night's show because it came out right as they were sort of ending. But Daniel, you and I get to, it's a sad, obviously, episode, but I think hopefully we can put a spotlight and sort of try to do Fernando a little bit of justice.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And of course, we welcome comments and stuff from the chat as well, because me and Matt weren't necessarily, we weren't alive, when Fernando was in his heyday. So would love to hear from some of the older people in the chat, whether it's stories, memories, whatever the case may be. But obviously, like you said, a very sad day for all of LA, Dodger fans. You can't really think of too many athletes that had the impact that Fernando did on us, on one specific city. The way he burst onto the scene in 1981, Rookie of the Year, Cy Young, World Series. It's hard to have a better year than that, and of course, a huge Hispanic fan base in Los Angeles. So they, automatically gravitated towards him, and he kind of represented the city as best as any person could. And I know me and you both have had the opportunity to cover games at Dodger Stadium. So we would see him walking around there as the Spanish broadcast announcer, or at Camelback Ranch or whatever, and just genuinely like one of the nicest people. Like, would talk to anybody. Really funny too, honestly. Kind of a more dry sense of humor, but he was a really funny and friendly guy. So he will be missed. Ones like these hit hard just because he was only 63. So I know we had found out a few weeks ago he was stepping away because of an illness, but we didn't really know the severity of it. So to get the news last night that he had passed away, obviously very sad. And I know the whole community what kind of came together. I saw there were candlelit stuff outside of Dodger Stadium as well, and I know with the World Series coming up, I hope they find the right way to honor him. But yeah, just an incredible person, and sad to see him go, obviously.
Yeah, we have this comment from Ravens Moreland. It says, I was in my early 20s during Fernando's time. I lived and died with every pitch. I loved that man and what he did for the city of LA. So yeah, Daniel, you mentioned it. Unfortunately, you and I, we've been able to, kind of study the history of Fernando Valenzuela. We didn't necessarily live it. Ravens Moreland did. And I know other people in here did as well. Here's Apes Against the Machine says, I'm pretty much a Dodger fan because of Fernando. I wasn't alive when he started, but my father and family were Dodger fans because of him. His legacy is going to last a long time. And I think that's, what's interesting is you didn't have to necessarily be alive or be old enough to have remembered or truly appreciate what Fernando Valenzuela accomplished. And, we'll start from the beginning a little bit. And as Daniel mentioned, as we see comments in the chat, we'll be happy to throw them up. So if you guys have specific memories or anything like that, definitely do it. We appreciate everybody who's joined us tonight on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. If you're listening after the fact on podcasts, hello to you guys there. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review, and all that good stuff. But back to kind of the focus of tonight's show. The news, like as we said, came out, I think, just after 9 p.m. last night, or right at 9 o'clock. And, Dodger Stadium lit up blue. Their lights, they turned on blue. They put Fernando Mania Forever on their video boards and kind of the banners across the stadium as well. Today, the Cardinals, Cal Ripken Jr., I think even the Rams might have, a bunch of teams, a bunch of current and former players, both, in MLB and from other sports, kind of posted their well wishes and just some thoughts about Fernando. And I think it really highlights, like we said, his reach was beyond just LA and the Dodgers. And those athletes don't come along very often. And the Dodgers specifically, and for you and I and other, Laker fans in this chat, like we've been fortunate enough to get to witness these special, players and broadcasters, Vince Scully, Chick Hearn, like it extends beyond, just the court or the play or baseball field. And with Fernando Valenzuela, obviously, like you mentioned, being the Dodgers and in LA, a big, Mexican community and all that, like he brought there's countless articles at the time and since that, both before his passing and with it, of how much he really brought in that fan base and invigorated Dodger Stadium that way. And you mentioned it, 1981 is obviously the season that he's most remembered for. I think he did pitch 10 games at the end of 1980, but it was 1981 where Fernando Mania was born and really just took off. And I want to go through some of the stats really quick, because if you haven't heard or looked at what Fernando did to start the 1981 season, I would put it up against any other kind of start to a career for anybody, like pitcher, position player, basketball player, quarterback, like anything. And he famously got the start on opening day because Jerry Royce injured his calf the day before. Valenzuela held the Astros to 5 hits. 9 innings, complete game. The Dodgers got a win. Gave up 1 run to the Giants in his next start. Then put together 3 shutouts in a row. Gave up 1 run in his 6th start of the season. Then had another shutout right after that. And then he really struggled. He gave up 2 runs to the Expos. You add that all up, and it was an 8-0 personal record for him as a pitcher. 8 complete games.
I know you love that 8-0, 8 complete games. That's old school ball right there.
We need to see more of that again. And another stat that I love, 0.50 ERA. And for Daniel and those who are of the more analytically inclined, it was a 1.78 whip, which at the time wasn't any. I don't even know if they knew. Excuse me, not whip, FIP. I don't even know if they knew what FIP was back in the early 80s.
Definitely not.
But that still gives you, somewhat of an idea. Sure, he didn't have the 0.5, but a 1.78 FIP, that's an ace level caliber pitcher, obviously, in today's game. I said it, you seem to be agreeing. Like that string of 8 starts in a row, whether it's beginning a season or a career, if you will, even though he did have the 10 games before the year before, like, does that compare? Like, can you think of anything that kind of comes close to that?
The only thing that comes to mind, and it was when I kind of really learned about Fernando and that kind of Fernando mania, how he burst onto the scene like that, was when Yasiel Puig came up in whatever year that was, and he kind of had a month or whatever where he was just going off and hitting everything and taking the world by storm. He wasn't able to necessarily keep it going the whole season, the way Fernando did, and won the World Series and everything. So it's obviously a very small fraction of it, but that was kind of when I found out about what, I think I was kind of in my teens at the time, so didn't know a whole lot before that. And I kind of, started digging and such, but like the numbers you just laid out are pretty insane. Like even for like a veteran, MVP Cy Young caliber pitcher, those are great numbers. But for a rookie to come up and do it in his real first, extended look at big league action, is there really is nothing like it. And that's kind of how the city really fell in love with him. And then, it just took off from there, really.
Yeah, we have our first super chat of the night, and it's from Richard, who's in here with us all the time. So Richard, thank you for this and always tuning in. He says, Fernando changed the culture of an entire fan base. He brought back a bitter Latino community still angry over the neighborhood being torn down for Dodger Stadium. I was in high school. It was magic. Yeah, that's another point. Obviously, the Dodgers, kind of the history in coming to LA and how Dodger Stadium got built is not the most kind of, I guess, clean, if you will. There are some there's a downside and an unfortunate side to all of that has happened, and it's been documented at length. But yeah, to Richard's point, Fernando being able to do what he did, I think that's not something I don't know about you, but for me, like, I didn't truly realize the impact that he had, like, on not just the community, but not just like the literal community in terms of fans going to the stadium, but everywhere. Extended, obviously into Mexico, considering he was he hailed from there, and that, like, I learned that as I got a little bit older, and kind of the significance and the importance of it. Obviously, being Mexican, like my dad's side of the family, not huge into baseball necessarily, but Fernando Valenzuela certainly like is a pillar in their community. And I remember, I think it was last year when they did the Fernando bobblehead for once they finally retired his number. One of my uncles who lives in Mexico had reached out and asked, like, if there was any way we could get him a Fernando bobblehead, and it hadn't necessarily crossed my mind. Then I realized, like, oh man, like for us in this bubble, like, okay, like we were celebrating, we were happy for Fernando to finally have that moment, but then thinking about it from, extending out into Mexico, like that further just embodied, I think, the impact that he had.
Yeah, no doubt. And like kind of our generation, like we think of Kobe as kind of that, top LA athlete or whatever that pretty much everyone, fell in love with and he kind of represented the city. Like Fernando was like that, during the course of his career. And like you said, it's kind of brought back that part of the fan base, which is obviously what, huge today when you go to Dodger Stadium, even just, in the city and whatnot. So it is hard to really quantify that impact, but you could see it, like even when he was at the stadium, fans were always shouting his name, or he'd be, on Sundays before games when they would do, I'm blanking on what it was called in the parking lot before the game. He would always,
it's Viva Los Dodgers.
Viva Los Dodgers. I was going to say Vamos Dodgers, and I knew that wasn't right. So I was close though. But yeah, Viva Los Dodgers. He'd be out there signing autographs, meeting fans and whatnot. Super generous with his time always. So obviously it's he's going to be missed in a big way. But I am glad you mentioned how last year they retired his number. Like I'm glad that he was able to at least be there for that, because that was long overdue. Like for years, people were calling for that to happen. So I'm glad that they did, finally do it, and he was able to be there for that. And what was now, the year before he died. So they got it in, just in time, and that was a great kind of weekend celebrating him. All his former teammates, Jaime Herrin, everyone was there celebrating him. So at least we got that in what's obviously a very unfortunate situation here.
And Laura, who's in here with us all the time, she says, my love for Dodgers began listening to games on the radio with my grandpa, a Mexican immigrant. Fernando was the pride and joy of Mexican Dodger fans. Mexico is mourning his death. And yes, no question about that. I did see, Robert Martinez is asking, is he the only pitcher in baseball history to win the Cy Young and Rookie of the Year in the same year? And yeah, as we were going to circle back to a couple other stats from 1981 that I wanted to bring up and mention. This was one of them. He was a Rookie of the Year, Cy Young, only player who has ever done that. And so again, I think it just speaks to how remarkable of a start his career was. Let's see. We have a super chat from Ravens Moreland. He said, for young ones, imagine Rich Hill at his most dominant, but being able to spin it forward or backwards while also hiding his eyes from you. That's an interesting comp. I don't know if Rich Hill isn't necessarily somebody who would come to mind for me. I think it's also hard. Like, I don't know. I like Rich Hill. I think he has his moments. I was open to the Dodgers potentially signing him this year when he wanted to come back. Like, why not as a 6th or 7th starter? I can't really picture or remember Rich Hill in his most dominant form. I think that's just hard. Like the Dodgers didn't necessarily get it, and he's dealt with injuries throughout his career. But I think, from a left-handed standpoint, maybe a little unorthodox Ravens, you might be onto something there. James Gomez says Fernando will live in our hearts forever, and it looks like his profile picture there's that Fernando, Pepe,
Jaime,
Jose Mota, and Jaime. Yeah, it's a good picture. Noisy Ninja 91 says, I know he was very private. Is there any belief that he asked for his number not to be retired? I don't think that this is the case. I've covered the team basically day in and day out since 2014, and that's not something I ever heard. I would say that Fernando didn't ask for his number to be retired. I think he and then he went on the record once it was finally happening, and he was getting asked that question, like, what do you feel now that it's finally happening, and this and that. And he said, he was always at peace with it. He appreciated the Dodgers organization not giving out 34 out of, respect to him. But he said if they wanted to and somebody wanted to wear it, like, he would have understood. So Noisy Ninja, no, I don't think that there's any belief that he specifically asked not to be up until last year. I don't know, Daniel, if you would feel, I know you're around the team
Yeah.
a lot over the years as well. I don't know if that's something you ever really picked up on.
No, definitely not anything I picked up on. And for those who don't know, like the reason his number wasn't retired for all those years is because the Dodgers basically have a policy that like you have to be in the Hall of Fame to get your number retired. And even though Fernando had a great career and potentially a Hall of Fame worthy career, he didn't end up getting in. But do you? I honestly don't know. Do you know why they finally decided like we're doing it now, like when they did it, or was it just like, all right, finally, like it's time?
Yeah, they never really said anything on the record. Obviously, the first sort of step and what I thought maybe was going to be kind of the only thing was in 2019, Fernando, Don Newcomb, and Steve Garvey were the inaugural class of the Legends of Dodger Baseball, where your number is not retired, but you get a plaque at the stadium. There's a whole, pregame ceremony type thing. And I thought that that was going to be the extent of it for him. Then came 2023, and they announced at FanFest it was that they were going to be retiring. Fernando was there. They had him on stage. They did a whole thing. So there wasn't any there wasn't anything shared with us as to why they made a change, other than Stan Kasten alluding to we felt it was time, and people have been wanting it. I think Stan Kasten said it was either the number one question you would always get asked or the number two question, something along those lines. But yeah, that's like you said, it's better late than never. And fortunately, the Dodgers were able to do that while Fernando was still with us to see it. We have a couple super chats. Apes Against the Machine says Fernando Valenzuela should be considered for the Hall of Fame, not just for his career, but for the impact he had on Latino and international fans. He transcended the game. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. This was a point that I was going to bring up. So Ape, I'm going to take your super chat down just because it covers us a little bit. But that was the point that I was going to bring up is I think what hurt Fernando is injuries and the overall body of work for his career, doesn't necessarily scream Hall of Fame. Like I recognize that. I think at his peak, and when you look at some of the impact we've discussed, and then there's more to it, that warrants being, a Hall of Fame type player. I think we have seen the Hall of Fame make certain exceptions or get guys in through whether the Veterans Committee type thing, and if it's not the traditional vote. So yeah, I mean I don't know if it's, and maybe there'll be something now to get him enshrined somehow in Cooperstown. But do you agree with that sentiment that he should have been in for looking at reasons beyond just his baseball career?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, when you look at his overall impact, like there aren't many athletes at all that even compare. And I do think like when you look at his career, like you mentioned the injuries, like before he started getting hurt, like in his late 20s or whatever, which is still super young, like he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory, like no doubt about it. Like he was an all-star 6 years in a row. Obviously, we said, Rookie of the Year, Cy Young his first year, wins the World Series that year. And then he finished, let me see, he's got 4 top 5 Cy Young finishes. And to his credit, even though he did deal with a lot of those injuries and was out of baseball completely at one time, he ended up, his career finished up in 1997, which just feels like insane to even think about, like, because we're talking about 1981 when he burst onto the scene. So that's actually a pretty lengthy career, 15, 16 years, whatever it was, 6 All-Stars, a Cy Young, 2 World Series rings. So when I'm just talking about the on-field stuff, and then when you add the impact he had off the field as well, I definitely think he should be in.
Yeah, EC says true body of work doesn't necessarily scream Hall of Fame, but what about his performance during the 81-86 campaigns? He was unreal during those 5 careers. Yeah, I mean that's a lot of what Daniel just hit on, and I fully agree. I mean, I think the Hall of Fame, what gets you into the Hall of Fame has changed from each decade, it seems like, and every 5 to 7 years, I feel like there's a different criteria of what gets you in. And so, yeah, it's I think it's unfortunate that Fernando didn't get elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame, and then that sort of invariably kind of delayed the Dodgers being able or being willing, I guess, to officially retire his number. I think it should be. I think Fernando's in the Mexico Hall of Fame. I'm not 100% sure if that's the official name for it, but I know he's inducted there. He's been recognized by other kind of baseball communities or bodies, if you will. Here's another super chat from Freedom. I never saw any Dodger like him in Dodger blue, like El Toro. I saw him pitch many times. He was on a level as rookie that was amazing. I have a signed Fernando bobblehead. I'm so thankful. El Toro, R.I.P. Senor. That's awesome that you have that bobblehead and the memories of being able to watch him pitch. You know, I can't, as much as, you know, Daniel, as we keep saying, like, we can we can appreciate looking back on what Fernando did throughout his career, but the fans that got to sort of live that and be at the stadium for that type of buzz, you know, not the only thing, you mentioned Yasiel Puig. I think that's a good comparison. I feel Clayton Kershaw's MVP season when he was starting at Dodger Stadium, I felt like those were like must see, must go type thing. I know I was going to a lot of those games just because tickets were a lot cheaper back then, a lot easier to get. You know, you could find a scalper driving up the hill into Dodger Stadium. But still, all of that, I think, pales in comparison to the buzz. And, you know, there's the video that's always been around of a woman running onto the field and giving Fernando a hug and a kiss. Like, we haven't seen that. And some of it is Dodger Stadium security is changed. But yeah, you know, things like that. And real quick, I want to, you know, we were discussing the 1981 season. I don't think we should move on from that without mentioning how it ended. Coincidentally, the Dodgers made it to the World Series that year against the New York Yankees, which you may have heard. The Dodgers and Yankees are playing in the World Series this year. Yankees won the first 2 games, and then here comes Fernando with 149 pitches in 9 innings to get a complete game win. Dodgers, as I mentioned, had fallen behind 2-0 in the series. That was their first win. They rattled off 3 more to win it in 6. Are we ever going to see 149 pitches in a World Series game? From one pitcher? Maybe from obviously a full staff, right? But from one pitcher?
I don't think so. And also, I saw some people, you know, pointing in the chat when we're talking about his stats and accolades and stuff, like 113 complete games. Like, that's just unheard of. Like, the whole league isn't going to combine for that many complete games in the next like 5 years combined or something. Like, you know, it's insane to think about. Obviously, that was a very different time. Tommy Lasorda leading the way there. He's rolling with his guys. But, you know, I just don't think we live in that world anymore. And of course, you see the back half of his career, you know, was derailed by injuries. So that it definitely caught up to him. And you see the same thing with Sandy Koufax, was basically done playing by the time he was 30. So I think there's a reason that no one throws that many pitches anymore. We're lucky if we see a guy get to like 85 or 90, you know, especially when you're talking about the playoffs with the Dodgers. There's such a quick hook with these guys that they don't really get to pitch out of those jams. Like the start you were just talking about in that game 3 of the World Series, he walked 7 guys in that start, gave up 9 hits in 9 innings, gave up 4 runs. But, you know, 4 runs in 9 innings is honestly not that bad. Like, you're giving your team a chance to win. The Dodgers won 5-4 that game. So you know, that was just a different time. And no, to answer your question, I don't think we're ever going to see anything like that again.
Yeah, and real quick, just kind of the last thing on 1980. I'm pretty sure Fernando, did he win a Silver Slugger that year, or did they come later? I forgot. I should have double checked that. But I am seeing people, yes, appropriately pointing out that at the very least,
it was that year.
Okay, so that was the first one. He ended up with 2 in his career. So he was a pitcher who could handle the bat a little bit as well, which I always appreciate, because that's what I like to refer to as real baseball, not what they have the guys playing these days. Let's see. I saw another good comment in here. Somebody's saying, yeah, golf for me too. Says, I was in my mid-20s when Fernando shined in 1981. I consider myself so fortunate to see Fernando actually pitch. Yeah, I mean, like we said, you know, that's a little bit of a good jealousy from Daniel and I for some of you guys who were around for that.
He definitely would have been my type of pitcher, like that I would have enjoyed, you know, watching pitch every week. Like a very cerebral pitcher, like always one step ahead, mixing up his speeds. Obviously, the screwball was devastating, so I would have enjoyed. You know, I'm definitely jealous of this commenter.
Yeah, Hawaiian Kira brings up a good point. Won't be able to see pitchers hit anymore except for Ohtani. Yes, that's a good point. Next year, when Ohtani is pitching again and still hitting. Let's see. I think we had a couple more or one more super chat. Thank you for this one, Ken. It says RP Fernando, incredibly exciting baseball pitcher. He mentions the 2 Silver Sluggers we just discussed. The excitement was based on his talent, but his joy for the game, and he helped break through the Yankees and win the World Series in 1981. Yeah, and that World Series start that you and I were just discussing in Game 3, which again the Dodgers were trailing. They had lost the first 2 games, then Games 3, 4, and 5 were played at Dodger Stadium. Fernando was on the mound for Game 3, 149 pitches, got the win, turned that series around. I think safe to say it happened on this date. So as Daniel and I are recording this show, that Game 3 was October 23rd, 1981. So kind of, unfortunate tie-in that we're having to discuss it sort of in this light of Fernando not being here with us anymore. But I think also on the other side, like kind of a nice little connection there when looking back on his career, and obviously that World Series that meant a lot, not just I think for Fernando on a personal level and his career, but the Dodgers, as the comment said, they were able to. It's been tough sledding against the Yankees in the World Series for the Dodgers if you look at their first 11 meetings.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and it's kind of tying it back in, the anniversary and everything, and of course here we are, Yankees Dodgers. About to kick off on Friday, and this would be a great way to honor him by going out and beating the Yankees again. I know that's what he would have wanted, of course, and hopefully there's great tributes at the stadium. Let's bring the mariachi band back, even if it's not on a Tuesday. I think games 1 and 2 are Friday, Saturday, but I hope they give him a great tribute because he's one of the most beloved, and obviously the fans are going to want to show their respects when they're going to the stadium, and he's kind of going to be there, even though he's not actually there. He's going to be there in spirit, no doubt.
Yeah, a couple things really quick before we discuss maybe some of the tribute stuff. Golf for me too is saying, if fans in the chat like to know more about Fernando, highly recommend the book Daybreak at Chavez Ravine. Author is Eric Sherman. That's a good point. It reminds me, I'm going to put it in the chat if you guys don't necessarily need to watch it now, but that's the YouTube link to Jeff actually interviewed Eric earlier. I'm pretty sure it was earlier this year about that book. So if you want to learn more about Fernando, definitely check that out. I don't know how clickable that is when we post it. The URL doesn't look right, but if you're having trouble, maybe you could go to our channel and just type in, Eric Sherman interview, and it'll bring it up, or look at Jeff's Twitter account at Jeff Spiegel. We can also tweet it out for you guys later tonight as well once we get off. You mentioned some of the tributes, and yeah, fans have already, their pictures are coming out of fans putting flowers and kind of making a memorial at the Welcome to Dodger Stadium sign, which is a nice touch. We've seen it in the past with Tommy Lasorda, Vin Scully, things of those nature. The other thing is MLB, when Rob Manfred did issue his statement regarding Fernando passing away, he did say that he would be celebrated during the World Series at Dodger Stadium. So it didn't specify if it was game 1 or 2. I'm inclined to believe that it would be game 1. We've been getting questions. I have seen them asking about a 34 patch on the jersey. The Dodgers have not shared anything yet. I also would believe that they're going to be able to do something like that pretty quickly in time for the World Series. I would hope that they do. But yeah, that's where kind of that stuff stands right now in terms of sort of formal celebration and recognition. We have another super chat from Ken. Thank you for this one as well. It says, in my 40 plus years as a Dodger fan, I've never yet experienced the excitement of Fernando Valenzuela. I'm assuming he means the same type of excitement, which is, I know, Daniel, that's something you and I were discussing. I mean, I don't know, even if we expand it to other sports, I can't, the Kobe, like Shaq stuff, that era, like that, I know that really captivated the city, but I still think that it fell short. And I mean, definitely. I'm not fully up to speed on like soccer culture and international soccer and things like that, so I can't speak to that sense. But at least in the United States, like nothing else really comes to mind as being able to sort of compare.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, of course, this season with Shohei coming to the Dodgers was definitely an exciting time, but yeah, I still don't, it's not comparable in the same way, because obviously we expected Shohei to have a great season, and He did obviously have a historic season, and we enjoyed the ride very much. But I don't think anything will quite match up to Fernando Mania and what that was like.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us and kind of looking back on Fernando's career and his celebration. I think you know, what we still he deserves what we discussed and certainly a lot more. I know that the sentiment in the chat is that and from Daniel and I is that the Dodgers at MLB will certainly pay their respects and show their celebrate Fernando and his life and his career. And hopefully it comes with game one of the World Series. I hope, that the Dodgers do wear some sort of patch for him during the World Series as well. And then obviously if they can go on and win 4 more baseball games, that would certainly go a long way. I know there quickly were calls to winning this one for Fernando, and we certainly agree. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. With Daniel and I will leave time for questions. So if you want to kind of discuss Fernando again at the end of tonight's show, you could ask some questions about it. Although, as you can see, Daniel and I weren't necessarily like old enough to, or in some cases alive to remember Fernando at his peak, but we can do the best we can. Daniel, you've been busy with Lakers season starting, and so we haven't really had a full chance to get you on here to look ahead to the World Series. It is media day tomorrow at the stadium, and as those of you who have been with us know that Blake Williams is credentialed. He will be there. I'm pretty sure it's us and True Blue LA are only kind of the Dodger focused websites that have been credentialed to cover the entire postseason. I handled the NLDS, and now Blake is taking care of the NLCS and the World Series. So definitely, if you're not reading us, then hey, I can't help you there. But media day, Daniel, a lot going on. Freddie Freeman getting better, Gavin Lux potentially getting better, Alex Vesia possibly getting better as well, Bruce Dargratterall. What is there one kind of big key that you're focusing on, whether it's health or another factor, maybe momentum type thing heading into the World Series?
Well, I would say usually you when you're playing as well as the Dodgers were, and especially with the bats, like you want to just keep playing, like you don't want all this off time. But when you really think about how many guys are banged up and potentially may or may not be on the roster, like having this time off has been really crucial. Like Freddie Freeman is obviously the first one. Like every day that he gets off, just to kind of rest his leg and hope the swelling goes down will be beneficial to him. And if he could get anywhere close, obviously he's not going to be 100%, but if he could get to the point where he's not having to worry about it as much and he could swing normally, like I know you were tweeting about this, and we've written on it about how he hasn't been able to really twist his ankle the way he normally would on his swing. And you could see with the numbers, like there's no power there when he has been in the lineup. Like he has gotten some hits and he's toughed it out, but it's clear that it was affecting him. So this time off could be big for him. You mentioned Gavin Lux was in and out of the lineup and whatnot. So having time off is big. And then I think honestly, probably the most important, I don't want to say more important than Freddie, but super important for this series, I think would be having Alex Vesia on the roster, just because when you look at the Soto matchup, you want to have a lefty that you could go to in big spots. And we all love Anthony Bonda, but he was the only lefty on the roster last round, and he could only pitch once in a game and whatever. So having Alex Vesia back, who was one of the best lefty relievers in all of baseball this past season, for that matchup would be huge. So definitely, I know Dave said they're going to kind of take it all the way up till Friday morning. So we'll kind of monitor that and see where guys are at. But I think this is a rare case where, the time off is actually beneficial as opposed to just wanting to get back out there as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I agree with you. And let's pause the World Series stuff because we have our biggest super chat of the night is from Carolina. She says, I saw Fernando Valenzuela at Dodger Stadium last year. We yelled hello to him from our seats. He was sweet, waved back to us with the biggest smile. Last night, bought a beautiful Fernando Valenzuela jersey from Mitchell and Ness. Can't wait to wear it in his honor. First, that's cool. I didn't even think about, Mitchell and Ness selling Fernando Valenzuela jerseys. I know that they're big in the throwback business, but wasn't necessarily sure if he would fall on their radar. So that's pretty cool to hear. Second, not surprising to know that that's the response you got from Fernando when shouting him out. He didn't want the spotlight. He didn't need it. but every time, and it was often, the Dodgers would show him on the video board kind of between innings. There would be a huge applause, a standing ovation. At more times than not, he would get up, sort of wave, express his gratitude. So yeah, I think he could appreciate that people loved him, I guess, for lack of a better word. But it wasn't something that he needed to kind of be in the spotlight. And I think that's one reason why he didn't like going down and sort of going out of his way, not going out of his way. He didn't like putting himself in position to talk with a lot of the players. If they sought him out, he was more than happy to do it. But otherwise, he wanted the focus to be on them, let them sort of prepare and do their thing. But yeah, I mean, not surprising to know that, again, that's what he did when he heard you guys calling him. So I'm glad that was something you guys were able to experience with him. Back to the World Series. Yeah, you mentioned some of the stuff that Freddie Freeman shared. And what was interesting to me is I thought like Game 5 was like the worst that I had seen him this playoff since everything. Like I felt like he really regressed, wasn't getting a whole lot on his swing. And then sure enough, he comes out and says, yeah, like I can't plant my right foot, and that he naturally rolls his ankle anyway, but because of the sprained ankle and because of the bone bruise, he's not able to do that right now. So yeah, getting basically, this kind of week off type thing, I think will be will be pretty significant. Another sort of interesting layer to all this, and Freddie himself said it, and again, I still can't believe that this is the first sprained ankle he's ever had in his life. Like that is, I felt like I had my first one within, 3 years of playing like sports, not necessarily youth, but once you got a little bit older and you're jumping and moving a little bit more, like they just happen, right? Because of that, though, he said he can't give like really much insight into, hey, like, yeah, I just need, 3 more days of rest basically. And then I know I'll be good. I'll turn a corner. And ironically, he said if it, had been a broken wrist or something, which is a more significant injury than a sprained ankle, he would be able to share like, yes, I just need to get past this point and then I'll know how I'm feeling. So that is something to certainly monitor. Obviously, he was going to be receiving treatment all throughout this week. He was going to take some batting practice. The biggest issue is running, but I think being able to stay off his feet. Daniel, you and I aren't athletes at his level, but we can certainly understand that elevating a sprained ankle and staying off of it certainly can do wonders for you.
Yeah, and he's talked about how much treatment he's been getting, so he's definitely doing everything in his power to be on the field there. And sometimes things don't cooperate, and of course the fact that he's been running on it and trying to play through it, it's not going to get better, because of that. Like like he said at the beginning of the playoffs when it happened, if this was the regular season, it would have been probably a month-long IL situation where he's just completely off of it, keeping it elevated and icing it, every hour or whatever. And then he would have been able to come back at 100%. But we're not at the point of the season where that's feasible, of course. So he's been doing everything he can to play through it. And then after the World Series ends, he'll be able to really rest and heal it completely. But yeah, I mean, I credit him for everything he's doing. We know it's not easy. And just hopefully that these few days could at least give him enough to get through one more series and be able to make an impact.
Yeah, maybe Freddie and the Dodgers should just commit to winning the first 4 games. That way, you don't have to keep pushing him. Like you play the fewest number of games possible, and then just get it done with and go into your off season and start the full rehab process.
No, it's a great way to do it.
So with media day tomorrow, the Dodgers, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this, because the way MLB describes it in the email to us is that the Yankees and Dodgers rosters will be made available out at the Center Field Plaza. But in reality, their World Series rosters are not set until Friday morning officially. Like they don't need to be. And so part of me wonders, like, is this going to be the NLCS roster? Like just the guys that were on that roster are who going to be, are speaking? Or in the Dodgers case, are they going to have 30 players because Vesia is a candidate also? But assuming it however you want it to be, is there one player that maybe you're looking forward to hearing from tomorrow that perhaps we haven't the past few days, or just maybe from an entertainment standpoint? Because the other thing to remember with things like this is it turns into a little bit like Super Bowl media day, where you get some outlets coming up and saying, hey, what was your favorite activity in, the 3rd grade type thing?
Yeah, no,
So
you'll have
whether baseball or entertainment, is there something you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I was gonna say you'll have like Guillermo from
Yeah.
Jimmy Kimmel there asking his funny questions. We'll see what he's got for Shohei. I mean, Kike always gives a great interview, and we were talking before this. Definitely want to hear from Gavin Lux to kind of see where he's at
Yeah.
in his. He's been dealing with the hip thing, and he was in and out of the lineup, but he was like the times he was out of the lineup, a lefty was on the mound. So even if he was like 100% healthy, chances are he would have been out of the lineup anyways. But he hasn't really. It's mostly been Dave, giving updates on him and the classic. He's fine, he's good to go, and then he's out of the lineup the next day. So who really knows? So I'll be curious to see what he has to say. And then I see people in the chat as well. Brusdar Gratterall, he's another one who, in theory, is in the mix. So we'll see if he's even available to talk to or where he's kind of at as well.
Yeah, that'll be curious. Yeah, I did see Gratterall getting mentioned. I don't know if he'll be there just because it wasn't like he was even active for the NLCS. So I find it hard to believe they would tell him, "Hey, you need to be one of the players that are now speaking for media day." But we'll see. We'll have as much. Yeah, Hawaiian Kira said it would be awesome if all of Dodger Blue is at media day. Unfortunately, with the amount of media credential requests that MLB gets for this, that's not something that is feasible. We would certainly take it. It would make our jobs a lot easier because we could divide and conquer rather than Blake. I hope he has his walking shoes on and his hard hat and a lunch pail because it's going to be a long day at the stadium tomorrow. But as always, we will have whatever videos we're able to get up on our channel tomorrow afternoon. I think the Dodgers were scheduled to start speaking. I could try looking it up if you bear with me. It was around 1 or maybe they were a little bit later actually. Yeah, so they start at 2:45. So kind of late afternoon, early evening, we'll have different videos up on who Blake was able to speak with. Somebody asking thoughts on Brosdowski's video. We do have Jeff interviewed Lance. I know those have been popular in the past. He really breaks down kind of the pitching side and the different details. I say this in fun, but all the nerd stuff that everybody likes to pay attention to. And so that will be up tomorrow morning. So definitely make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and you ring the notification bell so that you get an alert as soon as that goes live and you can watch it. Lance has always had a lot of great information to share about the pitching matchup between these two teams and kind of the pros and cons with how the staffs are sort of assembled. All right, let's get to some questions you guys have. As a reminder, if you could just start it with the word question in all caps, that way Daniel and I can pick it out a little bit easier when you guys are kind of just also replying to each other back and forth. But Daniel, as we wait for those to come in, what do you make of kind of a little bit of a narrative on social media that's forming of, like the Yankees and Dodgers playing in the World Series is actually bad?
I mean, it's laughable to me. And of course, we're Dodger fans and Yankee fans are probably, laughing with us. But if you take away the jerseys and the names of the teams, if you just look at the players, like these are the players that you want, on the biggest stage. Like you want to see Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge going head to head. You want to see Mookie Betts, doing his thing and Stanton hitting balls out of Dodger Stadium, like Juan Soto, of course. So as far as star power goes, like this is what you want to see. And I know we're definitely biased, but this is kind of the matchup that I've been wanting for a while now. Of course, we've never seen Yankees Dodgers in our lifetime. And it feels like there have been years where it was possible and didn't happen. And some years where the Yankees were great, but the Dodgers weren't, or the Dodgers were great, but the Yankees weren't. So the stars have never aligned. And it feels like this is the year that it's perfect that this is the year that they did align just because of all the star power on both sides. Like who knows, Juan Soto could be gone next year. Like in previous years, the Dodgers didn't have Shohei. So, I think this is, the best thing for the sport. And I know MLB's loving it. And I know you mentioned like kind of like the Super Bowl media day aspect of it, like the fact that they have, 4 or 5 days off here this week, like they could really, milk it until game 1 on Friday. I said that they got to be loving it. But to me, like if you're just a baseball fan and like, unless you're like a Padre fan or a Red Sox fan, like this should be a series that you're excited for. Like I know last year, like it was the opposite with the Diamondbacks and Rangers, and me, like even though the Diamondbacks knocked the Dodgers out of the playoffs, like I didn't really have any ill will towards them. Like I just wasn't super interested in that series because it didn't have, the drama and the star power that something like this does. So I think if you're just a neutral baseball fan, you should be excited. If you're, Padres, Giants, Mets, Red Sox, like I get why you wouldn't necessarily want to have this series.
Yeah. I mean, from like a pettiness standpoint, I can understand maybe fans being upset, but outside of that, like you said, just kind of the stars that are going to be playing, if you remove the jerseys, how could you not want to see that type of talent on the field? And in terms of the actual stars sort of aligning, the Dodgers, they finally got past the Padres, and the Yankees didn't have to play the Astros in the playoffs, so
Yeah.
it worked out for both sides. All right, let's get to some questions here. Hawaiian Kira wants to know, how many Yankees will Dodger Blue interview? So we're not going to be able to do like one-on-one interviews with anybody, whether Dodgers or Yankees. I think maybe we could have Blake get some video of Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, maybe Giancarlo Stanton talking type thing. But if there are other players you guys are interested in, throw them in the chat and we can do what we can to have Blake kind of pop around and get those while all the guys are talking. That's the other hard part with these Super Bowl media days, with World Series media days. It's basically one, maybe two players at kind of a podium, and everybody is speaking at once. And so you get what you can get, and then you kind of keep moving along. So it's organized chaos, if you will. Christopher says, Kike and Teoscar Hernandez have historically hit the Yankees really well. Could we see co-MVPs in the World Series? Thinking Hernandez and Hernandez can both be the best players this series. I will say that if Kike and Teoscar are the best players in the World Series that the Dodgers are going to win, I don't know if I would go that far to say it. I think to see co-MVPs is certainly not beyond question. The Dodgers they had co-NLCS MVPs in 2017 with Justin Turner and Chris Taylor. The tri-MVPs, I think, was that 81 or a different year?
I think it was 81, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, it can happen. Daniel, if it was going to happen this year, is it Hernandez and Hernandez that you're going with, or do you think you might pick two other players?
I mean, the thing about having such a short sample size to go off of is it could literally be anyone, as we just saw, like in a series that had Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts both have really good series. Like it was Tommy Edman that ends up as the MVP, kind of outshining everybody. So it could be everyone. And when it's hard to make a pick, just because when you look at the Dodger lineup, like all these guys have been producing and they're all kind of locked in right now. So like it definitely would not surprise me if Kike or Teoscar or both get super hot for a few days and come away with the MVP. But it also wouldn't surprise me if Shohei Ohtani just decides to hit 5 home runs and steal 4 bases, and we're crowning him as the undisputed king of baseball, as a World Series winner and MVP. So as long as it's someone that's on the Dodgers, I don't really care who it is.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's see what other questions we have. This one's from Beaches. Says, who do you think can be the next Dodger cornerstone player? I think the Dodgers should go all in for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. via trade or free agency, third base, then first base when Freddie retires. So it's not a bad idea to be looking ahead to Freddie Freeman retiring. That being said, I don't know if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is somebody that I would want the Dodgers to sort of go all in on. I think we've seen some inconsistent performances. I think injuries have been a factor there, but you feeling any different there? And if you are, is there a player that maybe you would want them to have? I mean, it's hard to say like the next cornerstone, right? Because Ohtani's not old per se, and you just signed him to a huge contract.
No, they got their cornerstones kind of locked up for a little while here. I will say Vladdy at third base is not an option like whatsoever. Like he's either first base or DH at this point. So I definitely wouldn't be giving like a huge contract to a guy like that necessarily. I'm with you though. It definitely feels like the cornerstones are already in the organization. We'll see. Maybe they go out and sign a Roki Sasaki, like add another cornerstone to the rotation. We know they're going to have to address the rotation in some way this off season. But I just think around baseball now, and to like teams' credit, they're doing a good job of kind of locking up their young players so they're not reaching free agency like in the prime of their careers. Like we saw the Padres did it with Fernando Tatis, like the Braves did it with their whole roster. Like Bobby Witt signed a big deal. You know, Corbin Carroll, I think he signed like before he even got to the big leagues, and same thing for Jackson Churio in Milwaukee. So, you know, to these teams' credit, they are doing a good job of not letting those guys get away. But there's no doubt, you know, maybe a couple years down the line, if there is a big time free agent out there, and you know, the Dodgers will be in on it, as we know they always are.
Mike Lopez says, would the Dodgers have a family member from Fernando Valenzuela's family throw the first pitch on game 1? I think if the family was open to something like that, they certainly would. But considering Fernando just passed away, I don't know how realistic that ends up being. But, you know, everybody's different. Maybe there might be somebody in the family who says, you know, the way I can kind of grieve and process this is by going to Dodger Stadium. But, you know, if they need time to sort of be with each other and stay out of the public spotlight, that's certainly understandable. So maybe it ends up being, I know Oral Hershiser was supposed to throw out the pitch, first pitch for game 7 if it went to that against the Mets. Initially, there was some thought of, okay, like if there isn't a game 7, which there wasn't, like roll him into game 1 of the World Series. So maybe that already has been planned. He was not a teammate of Fernando's. Oral also was on Sportsnet LA. They did a special. We have his clip on our YouTube channel of him sort of sharing a story about Valenzuela. So maybe he does it, and maybe they get another, you know, maybe former teammate type thing. But the family one, I think, will be decided by the family. If they're ready for it, great. If not, there's certainly not going to be any pressure put on by the Dodgers.
Just to add to that, that feels like something like maybe like opening day next year, like after they've had their time to grieve, because like you said, it's a very short turnaround. So if they want to, you know, I'm sure the Dodgers would love to have them, but definitely want to respect that privacy, you know, allow them to grieve. And then like I was at Lakers opening night last night, and they gave out Jerry West jerseys, who he just passed away in June, and his family, you know, was there in attendance sitting courtside for that. So I could definitely see something, you know, some way to honor Fernando on either opening day or at some point next season.
Donnie Boy says, the deeper we go into the series, are we the worse off? And so I'm assuming that this pertains to some pitching concerns in the starting rotation / bullpen. Daniel, I guess that's not something we necessarily discussed. What did you think of the Dodgers going with Flaherty? Yamamoto in game 2 was always made the most sense just based on his schedule and when you would want him to pitch. What did you think about Flaherty over basically Buehler? I know there was some thoughts of maybe the Dodgers go bullpen game to start it. I didn't think that was all that likely, but Flaherty instead of Buehler for all intents and purposes.
I thought that was the right call. You know, I don't think you want to overreact to one start necessarily. I still think you want to maintain confidence in your guys. And, you know, Jack is going to start games 1 and 5, and Walker is going to start 3 and 7. Like if it goes that long, of course. So it's not like if it was the old days where guys would pitch on 3 days rest, then it was a situation where you want Clayton Kershaw for game 1 so he could start game 4 and game 7. Like then, you know, obviously more would go into that decision. But the fact that they're each going to be pitching 2 games, I think you just kind of stick with the way you have been doing things. Buehler, you know, he's a guy who's kind of climbed up the trust tree, but I still don't think we could ignore the season he had. And of course, he's shown that he could pitch in any environment. So I do think you like him in that game 3 on the road, which is the same start we just saw in New York against the Mets, where he went out and had a really good outing, which at the time, like the Mets had just taken game 2 in LA. So that series was, you know, a coin toss at that point. And then Walker goes on the road and has a really good outing. So I like him there as kind of the stopper if you need it, or if you're up 2-0, like, you know, you feel really good going to Walker Buehler and trying to take a 3-0 lead there. So, and to answer this question, like, I don't necessarily think this is the case. Like, I know that's kind of the narrative going around about how the Dodgers bullpen is super overworked and they've been doing all these bullpen games. But I do think the way Dave has managed them, and also the way the offense has come through, or the starting pitchers have got rocked. Like, there was a lot of lopsided games in the NLCS where it's not like Blake Trinan and Evan Phillips and Daniel Hudson were pitching in 6 of the 7 games or something, like that. Like they've been on a pretty good schedule where they've been able to get days off, get rest days, and of course now they've had almost a week off by the time they take the field on Friday. So I think they'll be okay, and I think the Dodgers bullpen is a lot deeper than the Yankees. Like I think there's a lot more arms down there that Dave Roberts can trust as opposed to Aaron Boone, who has like 2 or 3. Like maybe that might even be stretching it, but if when you're looking at a Dodgers roster, if you get Alex Vesia back and maybe even a Brusdar Graterol, like that's basically a full bullpen of guys that you could kind of trust at this point. So I think he'll be able to, similar, as the NLCS, be able to mix and match and give guys, their time off so they stay fresh and make it through this one last series. And of course, this is it. So you could just kind of empty the tank from here.
Yeah, you hit on a couple key points. I think to simply answer the question, are the Dodgers worse off the deeper the series goes? No. Does their margin of error reduce a little bit? Yes, I think potentially. I think honestly where there's more pressure, not more pressure. The pressure I think is on the starting pitchers, especially the first 3 games, assuming the Dodgers have not announced it yet. I'm assuming Buehler would be game 3 instead of a bullpen game, but I mean they could. Yeah, I think he needs to be game 3 if you want him then available for a potential game 7. So that's not official. I'm guessing that's the order it'll be. The pressure, there is a little bit of pressure on Flaherty, Yamamoto, and Buehler to not go, 4 innings, not average 4 innings each, because you don't want to necessarily burn your bullpen out heading into, the game 4, which I think would be a bullpen game, which is part of possibly playing 3 days in a row without an off day, short of, one team sweeping. But yeah, to your other point, there's not a round after this. I think the way the Dodgers sort of Dave Roberts managed the relievers to get to this point worked out. I still don't necessarily agree with punting 2 games in a series. I think that's a dangerous strategy to play, but they won. They preserved their bullpen. Brett Honeywell saved the bullpen. He also might have saved Mookie Betts. That article is up on DodgerBlue.com if you guys want to check that out. But yeah, it's the World Series at this point. So if there was ever a scenario where Evan Phillips was going to pitch 3 days in a row, where Michael Kopech was going to pitch 3 days in a row, this is it. Like there is a tomorrow, depending on when you are, but there is not really, the proverbial tomorrow of a next series to sort of worry about and play for. There's only next year. And so don't risk guys in terms of injury, but yes, push them where, like otherwise we wouldn't see Evan Phillips appearing 3 days in a row without an off day. Sort of related to all that, Hawaiian Kira wants to know if you have a World Series X factor.
There's so many choices, I'll say the guy who's taking the ball in game 1, Jack Flaherty. Like, can he go out and give them a game 1 start similar to what he did in the NLCS? Like, I know we just said like they're not necessarily worse off as the series goes on, but like you said, you want to put yourself in a good position where you're ahead in the series and you could go chase those wins, like knowing you have 1 or 2 banked already. So it would be ideal to win the first 2 in LA and then go back to New York and only need 2 more. And of course, Yankee Stadium will be feeling a little tense if they're down 2-0 as opposed to if it's 1-1 or they're up 2-0. So, if Jack could come out and have a really good game 1 start, I think that could really set the tone for this series. So I'll say he's the X factor. And obviously we'd love a good game 5 start as well if it gets to that, but it starts in game 1.
Related to that, Mad Lad said, how confident are you that our rotation can hold down the top of the Yanks lineup? The thought of Soto, Judge, or Stanton at the plate with runners in scoring position is already filling me with dread. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think you're going to hold them hitless by any means. I would imagine that one of the 3 hits a home run at some point in the World Series. I think you obviously, like the question sort of says, the thought of them batting with runners in score, that's the key. You need to just try to keep 1 runner on base, if not bases empty at all times, to sort of minimize the damage there. I do think I get the concern, and they're certainly talented players. And again, I don't think the Dodgers are going to shut them down by any means, but they have shown an ability in the past to sort of at least neutralize or minimize the impact of another team's star, whether that's, through game planning or it's a combination of things. I think it's game planning and then having the talent in the starting pitchers, which I think the Dodgers do, to make sure that they don't get beat by the big guys every time.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think like the key is mainly to get the guys in front of them out, so they're not coming up with 2 or 3 guys on base where they could put up that really crooked number. Like with the way this Dodgers offense is going, like they're not gonna solo homers. Like giving up solo homers is not gonna kill the Dodgers. It's what we've seen, the games they lost to the Mets or the Padres. It's been one big inning basically in each of those games where you give up 4 or 5 runs and things kind of snowball from there, and you're not able to minimize the damage. And that has been a struggle with this team, like admittedly. So there is some concern there, of course. And when you see Soto and Judge and Stanton, those are terrifying hitters. Like we've seen Stanton hit a ball out of Dodger Stadium before, and we know what Judge and Soto are capable of. So it's not going to be easy, but this is the World Series. Like there was no matchup that was going to be, easy. So this who they're going to have to go through, and that's what they're going to have to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the Royals made it, I think that might have been. Although then at that point, if they made it, then they're the proverbial hot team, and
Exactly.
they're not an easy out. So yeah. All right. Let's see. Let's get to a couple more tonight. Back to back. Nate says before the DS, I felt confident Dodgers would win in at least 5. Before CS, I was confident they'd win in 5 or 6. Not sure about the World Series. How is your confidence this series? I'm relatively confident that the Dodgers will win. Like I don't think I don't want to play like I don't want to sit on the fence on purpose, but like no out neither team winning would surprise me, right? Like I could see the Yankees are certainly good, like you said. You don't get to the World Series without being a good team, so they're certainly good enough to win. The Dodgers obviously are good enough to win. I don't know if I feel any more or less confident in this matchup than I would prior years. I don't know if you're in the same boat.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I do feel though that like the Dodgers are the more tested team to this point. Like
Yeah.
like you just mentioned, the path, the Royals and Cleveland, like you're not exactly facing, the best teams ever there. So I do think, the Dodgers having gone through the Padres and having been down 2-1 in that series with their backs against the wall, being able to climb out of that and then beat the Mets, who at the time were, had been the hottest team in baseball for like 3 months or whatever. And the Dodgers were able to get past them. So they are battle tested. The talent up and down the roster, like definitely makes you feel confident. But at the end of the day, you're never going to feel that confident. Like this is playoff baseball here. We've all been through this time and time again. We know it's not going to be easy, but as far as like, I don't know. I'll say this. I've never been as confident that a Dodger lineup is going to score runs as much as I am than this one. And I think because of that, that gives me some level of confidence going into this series.
All right, there you go. We have a super chat, so let's get to that before we continue with some of the regular questions. It's from Charlie Toms. It says, RIP El Toro, we need to win for Fernando. I was born in 95, so never got to see him play, but as a Latino, and then it's a crying emoji, and it finishes with win for Fernando, and then a red heart emoji. Yeah, I mean, that's a sentiment that, Daniel and I sort of shared where we weren't old enough to also watch him play pitch, excuse me, or I guess we could say play because he was hitting. Pitchers were hitting at that point. So yeah, that was if you were in the chat with us earlier tonight, a lot of people were certainly expressing that same sentiment. We have another super chat from Carlos. It says this has been the longest week ever, and I did see some comments about that, sort of asking if this was I can't remember if this is more or fewer days than there have typically been before the start of the World Series. There was the potential to move up game 1 to Tuesday. So as we're sitting here, game 2 would have been tonight. So right about this time, it would have been, sort of ending, maybe depending on TV commercials and all that. But that required the both LCS series finishing by this past Saturday for them to move it up, which I thought was kind of weird that they would have been that aggressive with it.
Yeah, same.
But then if it ended Sunday, then no, you're going all the way out to Friday.
Yeah, like you would almost be punished for like handling your business quickly, like not getting that time off to reset your pitching staff and whatnot.
Yeah, but I mean, how's the week? I know maybe Daniel and I actually aren't the best people to ask this because Lakers season is starting, and so Daniel's been kind of going 100 miles an hour each day recently. For myself, Blake, the rest of our staff, like as much as it is like off days, there's still Dodgers are doing interviews. There's still a ton of things that we're having to do and prepare. So I honestly have enjoyed it because I haven't felt like as much pressure to, I mean, it's still been a lot of work, but like I haven't felt like, oh, we need to get all this done tonight because now game one is tomorrow. So uh maybe we're the wrong audience, but I can see from a fan perspective of, this wait has been difficult because there's a lot of talk and anticipation and things like that. Carlos with another super chat. Yeah, Daniel, he says we need you to put on a fake mullet, hashtag 2020. One of our other shows recently, there were people, you weren't on, but people were commenting saying that, Daniel, you need to grow out your hair again for the World Series.
Need to get my Joe Dirt mullet. But hey, we've made it to this point with the short hair. So I think, whatever superstitions or mojo, like everyone just keep doing what you've been doing. Like it's worked to this point. So let's just keep it going for one more series.
All right, we have a few more here. And speaking of superstitions, Noisy Ninja 91 says, any superstitions you've had this postseason? Mine is wearing the same hat every game and holding a baseball while Dodgers are pitching. LOL. I'm not superstitious. I'm more if you've watched The Office, I'm more little-stitious, like Michael Scott. I don't really necessarily do anything, not just this year, but other year. Like that's not necessarily my thing. And also, again, I was not worried at all about the NLCS. Like I texted you guys and I was serious saying this game is boring. Like game 6 was boring. Like when the Mets loaded the bases, I know I texted you were in it. I said, finally some excitement. Like, so I haven't been stressed. I don't really have any superstitions. Where do you fall on this?
I don't have superstitions of like I do this every time, but I will say, like, if I'm sitting on the couch watching the game and like the Dodgers aren't hitting at all, or like, they're losing and things aren't going well, like I'll try to change it up. Like I'll go move to the other couch or, stand up for a little bit. So like I'll do stuff like that. But like going into a game, like I just treat everything normally. And then if it's not working, I try to switch it up. But I don't have any like superstitions of like I wear this or I do this. Like it's just kind of, it's not working, so let's try something different. But at the end of the day, I still know like that's kind of more just for myself. Like obviously we don't have any sort of impact on what's going on the field, but whatever you can to do your part, at least in your own mind, you got to do it.
Yeah. All right, we're going to answer a few more questions, but while we're doing that, if you guys are superstitious, if there's something you have been doing, throw it in the chat and we'll finish with those. And Laura's also reminding me that the Mets loaded the bases twice. Yeah, then those were two exciting moments in an otherwise stress-free, relatively mundane game. Donnie Boy says I haven't changed my underwear, so he's fully committed to getting the Dodgers a win. But yeah, throw those in. We'll answer a few more questions and we'll close with that. Javier says, do you think the Dodgers should trade Will Smith this offseason and place Dalton Rushing at catcher? I feel like this stems from a lot of Will Smith's struggles this year and in the postseason. I know he did have the home run in game 6. No, I mean, Dalton Rushing hasn't even made his MLB debut yet. So to make a decision like that would be incredibly risky. All right. Kevin Dodgers Guerra, pretty straightforward question. Can we beat the Yankees? These Yankees, he says. Yes, I think the Dodgers can. Daniel, I know we just went over. Yeah.
We'll see if they do, but they definitely can. They played a series earlier in the season, and I'm pretty sure the Dodgers had their way in that series. So,
yeah. Noisy Ninja saying Honeywell needs to pitch to Smith. LOL. Yeah. I mean, hey, Honeywell said he grooved some pitches to Mookie in live batting practice. So
that was phenomenal.
Maybe Will Smith needs a little bit of that as well. All right. Let's see if we got anybody. Yeah, Maddie Man is saying, like the stream, everyone. Yes, if you're on YouTube, please like this video, subscribe, ring the notification bell, all that good stuff. It helps us out. Charlie Tom said, wearing my jersey while attending or watching a game, definitely superstitious because Yankees are scary. I believe we can do it. But yeah, okay. So jersey wearing is one superstition.
I will say, like, when I go to a game, like, as a fan, like, not covering it, of course, I always wear, like, something Dodgers, whether that be, like, a jersey, a shirt. It's usually a shirt and a hat, like, but I never just go to a game, like, just, like, as an anonymous, like, wearing nothing Dodgers. Like, I think if you're a Dodgers fan, you got to rep when you're at the games, no doubt.
Oh, man, my wife is watching this, and she's going to give me a hard time as soon as I hop off because I feel like if I run into somebody from like the press box or Dodgers, like they see me with media all the time, to then have like a
Sure.
Dodgers shirt or hat on, uh, I would feel funny. But hey, I am sticking by that hat that I wore in Vegas when Teoscar won the home run derby is been labeled my lucky Dodger hat at this
Yeah.
point. So
Never
uh,
lost. Never
yeah.
lost.
All right, not seeing a whole lot of super sit here. Hawaiian Kira says getting my Dodgers Hawaiian shirts ready for the World Series. Worked in the CS, so there you go.
So
If
that
it ain't
sounds
broke,
like my dad. That's pretty much all he wears is Dodgers, like Tommy Bahama or Hawaiian shirts. That's his whole wardrobe. So
yeah. Oh, Donnie Boy says I wore my Seager shirt and he homered against us. Well, hopefully you didn't wear it again. All right, we're gonna answer a couple more questions. So if you have superstitions, throw them in because we're still. I'm curious to see what you guys do. Oh, here was one. Back to back. Nate says I pace around my house the whole game and don't sit down until it's over. Yeah, my dog would not appreciate me if I did something like that. Here's a good one. Shota Motoji. I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name, so I apologize there. It says, have you read Grant Brisbee's article on The Athletic, The Hater's Guide to the 2024 World Series? What do you think with his comment on hating Red Sox / Padres for trading Mookie and Soto? I did see that they published this, but I read some of it, kind of the first paragraph or two. I didn't really get too far into it. I don't know. Did you come across it or no?
no, I haven't.
Okay, so yeah, our apologies there, Shota. We're
I
not
do.
fully.
I do agree though that trading, players the caliber of Mookie and Soto are usually not a good idea for teams.
Yeah, probably not. But if you're the team trading for them, then it certainly works out for those.
As we're seeing in this series.
Yeah. But yeah, not. I mean, I haven't read it yet. I thought it was kind of funny that they did that. And Grant Brisbee is, I'm pretty sure he's the Giants beat writer for the Athletic, so he always has some interesting takes on the Dodgers. And this isn't necessarily the Dodgers specific. And look, I think I don't know enough with the Padres. Red Sox, it did seem like they weren't necessarily making too strong of an effort to sign Mookie to an extension, I think, back, if I'm remembering correctly, back then. And so, it's always a tricky situation. A lot of these owners suggest that they can't afford players and a high payroll. But as we've seen during lockouts and stuff like that, it's not necessarily the case. All right, let's end with this one, and then Daniel, as you're answering, I'll look for more superstitions. Beaches wants to know what your thoughts are on this Lakers season that just began, and as we were talking about before we hopped on here, they're the first place Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, we're joking. It's lonely at the top. But I would say most of the time I come on this show to get away from the Lakers talk. But I guess after last night, that was a good win. We could talk a little Lakers. We'll see. Like, I think it's still too early to say. I definitely think from what we saw from JJ Redick last night, it's definitely encouraging. He seems like when you hire someone who's never been a coach before, like, you really don't know what you're going to get. And we've kind of seen that across baseball with certain guys who have been hired, which some of them work out, some of them don't. But so far from what we've seen from JJ Redick, he seems to be a huge upgrade. And we'll see if LeBron and AD could stay healthy and some of these key role guys. But things are looking good. I still think they probably need to make a trade or two to be like championship, contenders. Like, I think they're a playoff team with this roster, but if you want to be, the best team in the league, they probably need another piece or two. So we'll see if they go out similar to the Dodgers, like going out and getting Jack Flaherty and Kopech and Tommy Edman. Like, do the Lakers have a deal like that in them to propel them to the championship? We'll see.
All right. Well, I said that would be the last one, but we have some Laker fans in here. So since we're not going to, Daniel, we're not going to have you for a lot of this World Series run because of scheduling conflicts. Let's get a couple Lakers stuff thrown at you. And again, follow Daniel at LakersNation.com. He leads everything over on that side. Ran Matendo wants to know, can LeBron turn Bronny into anything decent? I mean, one, it's not entirely fair to pin on him, but do you see Bronny developing into anything?
I definitely think we got to give him at least a couple years. Like, I wouldn't expect anything out of him this season. Like, he's probably going to spend the whole year in the G League. Like, it's important to remember he basically didn't get to play a whole lot last year when he was at USC, just because he had the heart issue, and then when he got back, he was on a minutes restriction. So he basically just needs to play. Like, he needs to develop, he needs to make mistakes, work on his game. So I can't really answer that right now. I would say the odds of most, late second round picks, like, becoming anything in the NBA are pretty low. Like, there are some circumstances, but the odds are definitely against him. But I'm rooting for him. I think from what I've seen, in the media scrums and whatnot that we've been able to talk to him, he seems like a really nice kid. Like, he's handling everything really well. It's definitely not an easy position to be in, but I'm rooting for him. So we'll see. I'm not getting my hopes up that he's going to be an all-star or anything, but I'll be keeping tabs on him in the G League this year and see kind of how he develops.
All right, last one. DM24 wants to know why Laker uniforms are not gold anymore.
It's a great question. I will say they have, like, in the last 5 years, like, there was at one point where they were super banana yellow and they were pretty much unbearable. Like, they're not as bad now, but still not that traditional gold that we're used to, for the Showtime fans or, the Shaq and Kobe era fans. Like, that's the gold we're used to, and they haven't gotten back to that for whatever reason.
And the other great news for everybody is NBA and Nike just signed a new 12-year contract or something, right?
Yeah.
So this question might be better off directed towards Nike. Adrian Sosa wants to know, why does it say Dodgers? Stay on topic. Adrian, we did about an hour plus of Dodgers stuff. We had a few Laker questions pop in there at the end. Thank you for sticking with us through that. As a lot of our followers know, Dodger Blue, Lakers Nation are sites under the same network. Daniel runs the Lakers site. He was kind enough to join us tonight. We had a few Laker questions. Just like the food stuff, we thought we'd throw it in at the end. So that was that. But hey, it was only a few, and now we're done. Thank you to everybody who joined the live show tonight. If you missed it, if you weren't in here in the beginning, definitely rewind, go back to the beginning. We did a lot of reflecting on Fernando Valenzuela's career and just the impact he had on not only the Dodgers, but the community, baseball community, Mexican community, and just fans in Southern California and beyond as a whole. It's, obviously unfortunate news with his passing, but hopefully the Dodgers will be able to finish off the season with winning a World Series in his honor. Daniel, thank you. As I mentioned, we're not going to see a lot of him, unfortunately. I think him and I will probably be able to do the roster video on Friday morning once that is officially set. So we'll have him here and there, but otherwise the Lakers season is now in full swing. So his duties are going to be focusing on that, but hopefully he'll still be tweeting and he'll be able to pop in on occasion. Once again, thank you, everybody. The plan, we are going to be going live on Thursday night. Don't know about a time yet. It should be Scott and maybe Blake, depending on how late he is maybe at the stadium for. So just be sure to follow our Twitter account for that. We'll send out the link. And also, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell. You'll get an alert once it has been scheduled. So once again, that's Daniel. I'm Matthew. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.